The square rule or the rule of the square is an amazing visualization technique that helps you to determine whether your passed pawn will be able to queen safely on the board. Now just look at this situation on the board. You may be thinking that white is obviously winning here since white has a passed pawn. But actually the result of the game depends upon whose turn it is to play. So if it is white's turn, then white will obviously win this game. But if it is black's turn, then black can draw this game. Well, how did I calculate it so fast without moving any piece on the board? Well, that's the magic of the rule of the square or the square rule. So what is a square rule? So the square rule states that if the enemy king is not able to jump into the square that is formed by this passed pawn, then the passed pawn will be easily able to promote on the board. Now first let's understand what square are we talking about and how do we draw the square. So in order to draw the square, first we will mark this passed pawn, second we will mark the queening square, third we will draw a diagonal on the rank on which the passed pawn is going to promote. Now obviously here there are two squares where this passed pawn can draw a diagonal. But exactly where should we draw the diagonal? Which one should we consider? Well, in this case, we have to see where the opponent's king is sitting. So here, since the opponent's king is sitting on the king side of the board, that is why we will consider the king side diagonal. Alright. So the passed pawn, the queening square, and now this diagonal that we are drawing, and now the square on which this diagonal is ending, this one, and now with the help of these three squares we can draw a square on the board like this. So the square of this passed pawn would be this. Okay. Now as I told you earlier that the result of this game is totally dependent upon whose turn it is to move. So if it was white's turn to move, then white would have easily won this game. Why? Because white would have played d6, and now if you see, the square of this passed pawn is this one, right? And now since it is black's turn, black king will try to stop this passed pawn by coming on the g6 square. But since this g6 square isn't lying inside this square formed by the passed pawn, it is therefore no matter what black plays here, he will never be able to stop the queening of this pawn. So let's see this in action. Black plays king to g6, the pawn moves, king comes over here, and as you can see, the passed pawn has queened itself. Let's go back. So if it was white's turn in the game, then we can see the white is easily able to win this game because the king is not able to enter into the square formed by this passed pawn. But what if it was black's turn? Well, if it was black's turn, then black would have been able to draw this game because black would have entered this square. As you can see, this square formed by this passed pawn, the opponent's king has already entered this square, and now if white tries to promote this pawn, then it will not be able to do so because the king has reached to a correct position where it cannot let white win if he promotes his pawn. So let's go back. So with the help of the square rule, you don't have to calculate each move made by the king and the pawn in order to determine whether you would be winning the game or would be drawing the game. Let's look at another example. Here it is white's turn to move. And with the help of the square rule that we have just learned, we can easily determine in seconds that whether white will be able to win this game or not. Since it is white's turn in the game, white can easily win this game, and I don't even have to calculate these moves. Why? Because if it's white's turn, white will simply push his pawn further, and now if you draw the square of this passed pawn, then this would be the square. Correct? And as you can see now, since it is black's turn, black king might come over here or over here, doesn't matter. But since he is not able to enter into this square, he will not be able to stop the promotion of this pawn. So without even having to move pieces on the board, just with the visualization technique, you can easily determine whether you're winning or not. In the same example, if it was black's turn to move, then black can easily stop the promotion of this pawn because black has successfully entered into the square of this passed pawn, and therefore this game would be drawn. I'm sure you found this technique fun to learn. So do like this video and subscribe to my channel. Let's jump onto this challenging puzzle. Here it is Black's turn to move, and with the help of the square rule that you just learned, I want you to determine the outcome of this game. What do you think is gonna happen? Is Black gonna win? Is Black gonna lose? Think about it. I'll give you 5 seconds to think. Your time starts now. So, I'm sure most of you must have thought that, hey, Black is gonna win because Black can easily jump into this square of this passed pawn of the white and can easily stop the promotion of this pawn. So by that logic, either the game would be a draw or maybe Black would win, but definitely white is not winning. That's what you must have thought. But here is an interesting thing. Though Black is able to jump into the square of this passed pawn, but he cannot stop the promotion of this pawn. Why? Because the queening square of this pawn is the e8 square, and the shortest route to reach to this e8 square is this. But unfortunately, this Black king is being blocked by his own pawn. So therefore, he will not be able to reach on time to stop the queening of this pawn. So why did the rule of the square didn't apply here? That's because when you're calculating based on the rule of the square, you have to make sure that the king's path to the queening square is not blocked by any of the pieces. I know this was an interesting example to look at. Now, based on what you have learned, I have another challenging puzzle for you. Here it is Black's turn to play, and you have to determine the outcome of the game based on the square rule technique that you just learned. I'll give you 5 seconds to think. So I know the obvious move that Black would play over here is king to b4, because since white is threatening to promote this passed pawn, Black wants to make sure that he reaches on time to stop this pawn, so he plays king to b4 in order to enter the square of this passed pawn. So looks like white is not gonna win this game. But hey, there's a small little tactic that white can play over here in order to win this game. Can you tell me what that is? Well, since this pawn is gonna queen on this f8 square and the king's path is currently cleared, all you have to do is find a way to block the path of this king. And that can be done by this little guy over here sitting on the d5 square. So what will you play? You'll play d6 over here. Now, since you are threatening to promote this pawn on the d8 square, Black has to stop this. So Black is forced to capture this pawn. But after this pawn capture, Black's own pawn is now blocking his king's path to the white's queening square. And therefore, white can now easily win this game. See? So wasn't this an amazing technique to create a blockade in the king's path to the queening square? I know you're enjoying this chess video, and therefore I have another interesting puzzle for you. Here it is white's turn to play, and as you see, white is down in material by 2 points. Black has 2 strong pawns over here, and being 2 pawns down in the end game could cost you an entire game. So that's not a good news. But here it is white's turn to play, and if white finds the accurate move over here, he can turn the tables. That means he can actually go on winning this game. How? Well, think for a while. I'm going to give you 5 seconds to find the answer to this. So although Black has 2 extra pawns, but these pawns are still far behind from queening. But look at the white pawns over here. They have already entered the Black's territory and they are very close to their queening square. But with queens on the board, life is not going to be that easy. So all white needs to do over here is trade queens, and after that white can just use his pawn majority on the queen side to get a pass pawn on the board. So white plays b6. Now Black is forced to capture, otherwise this pawn is queening over here. So Black takes a pawn and now white takes back. And after this move, if you see, this is the square of this pass pawn. And now it is Black's turn. Black cannot enter the square and therefore white can now easily win this game. So how did white found out the winning move in this situation? Well, let's go back. It was easy. White saw that he has a pawn majority on the queen side of the board. and his pawns are very close to queening the square. So all he had to do is get rid of the queens, and then he knew that after the queens are off the board, this king will not be able to enter the square of the passed pawn. And based on that simple calculation, white was able to find the winning move in this situation. So I know by solving all of these amazing challenging examples, you have become a pro in this square rule. So that is why here is the challenging question of the day for you. Here it is white's turn in the game, and you have to tell me that what should white play over here in order to win this game. Let me know your answers in the comments box, and I'll see you in the next video.